The origin story of Bumblebee on Earth. Is it more of the same, just smash 'em up, shoot 'em up robot movie? Or is it more than meets the eye? In Bumblebee, we get what you would expect, an origin story of how Bumblebee came to Earth and then just his adventures, I don't really know if that's the right way to say it, but he being on Earth before the rest of the Autobots arrive. He comes across Charlie, this 18-year-old girl played by Hailee Steinfeld, and the relationship that builds between the two is actually surprisingly good. I didn't expect to have such a good relationship that you could actually feel, I mean, it was palpable, between a robot, CGI, but a robot and a person, and it be believable. The story itself is a lot of fun because you get to see Bumblebee first on Cybertron with the rest of the Autobots and the Decepticons, and you get to see him as a warrior. And then you see him back on Earth, or then on Earth, not really back on Earth, and through the course of some things, his memory kind of loses a little bit. So it's not really wiped, but it's like just, I don't know, shut down. It hasn't been rebooted correctly. And so like any computer, you know, it's kind of glitchy and he doesn't really know everything. And you get to see him just kind of build as a character and as a persona. And all along the way, Hailee Steinfeld just kind of feeding into that and really just their relationship blossoming. And it really plays into a lot of fun things because he doesn't remember all his warrior stuff, she's trying to show him how to hide so that people, if they see him, they will freak out, you know, and then the cops come and all kinds of military or whatever, the government will come and do all kinds of tests or dismantle him or whatever. And so there's a great scene on the beach, and you see they put like almost the persona of a cat or a dog, like a puppy, into Bumblebee in certain aspects, which just made him very relatable, very lovable. Like your heart went, oh, that's cute. Even though he's this giant robot, he has a great personality. For the most part in the film, the CGI and the effects are really good. There were a couple times that it kind of stepped out of it, and you could really tell that there was either green screen going on or that the interaction between the human and the robots wasn't actually happening there. But, I mean, come on, it's a movie. But still, for a lot of the time, though, you couldn't tell. And it was really well done. And even in fight scenes, where I think about, you know, you have a lot of action going on and a lot of moving parts just digitally, where it could become very blurred and very messy and hard to determine everything that's going on, it remained fairly crisp so that you could really see some good action. I mean, I compare that to the fight in Venom, and it became this huge mess that you couldn't really see anything of. And that was some bad CGI. In Bumblebee, the CGI remains really good, and I'm happy for that. I love it that we get the Transformers as we remember them, or at least I remember them from the 80s cartoon series. I was alive when they were out. I watched it as a teenager almost, and it had a whole bunch of the toys. Still have them actually someplace. They're out in the garage. I just couldn't find them. But it was really cool to see them because you have the original Optimus Prime, and you have like Starscream or just in some of the jets, and they look like the fighter jets. And I just loved that because that was really cool. Now, do we see Megatron? I don't know. I'm not going to tell you that one. But just the whole look of it, it was very nostalgic, and it brought it back to how it was when we watched the cartoons, and I loved it. And yes, you hear Optimus Prime's voice, and it's still done by Peter Cullen, so it is still that exact voice that was in the cartoon, through the Michael Bay films, and now into this new iteration with the just standalone Bumblebee. Now, can we take a moment and really talk about the soundtrack, because it was awesome. If you like 80s, anything about the 80s, some of the music is iconic. Now, it is, a lot of them are one-hit wonders or whatever, but it sticks with you. And a lot of the people, well, like any decade, regardless of when you were born, when you grew up, that decade, you have songs that are just special to you that you remember, and when they come on, it instantly takes you back to a place. This soundtrack has Tears for Fears, Sammy Hagar, Aha, Steve Winwood, The Clash. I mean, just some really good stuff. And it really did a great job of just capturing the whole feel of the 80s. Now, all the set design too. I mean, the clothes, the cars, everything like that was outstanding. but the music really sealed the deal. What caught me off guard was how funny the film actually was. I mean, it was way more funny than I thought it was going to be. I expected a little bit of humor here and there, but there were laugh out loud moments and parts where I couldn't even hear what was going on the screen because the audience was laughing so hard. Now, is it totally gutbuster laugh out loud, just like, you know, you're doubled over a comedy? No, it's not. But there are some moments that are really funny. There are a couple moments that fall kind of flat too, where you're like, that wasn't really funny, but whatever, we're gonna keep going. What's exciting in Bumblebee also is how it sets up, and you can see these little breadcrumbs as they will connect to the Transformers as the movies progress. Like, we get Sector 7, and you see this olive-skinned guy who has some dark brown curly hair, and you just wonder, is that John Turturro's character later on? Very well could be. Hailee Steinfeld is great in this. She does just a really good job. I mean, she has a good sense of emotion and good range in there. I mean, she's playing this tumultuous 18-year-old who has some just hurts in her past, and you know, that causes her to act out a little bit, but also makes her tough. And so she's really believable for the most part. There's a couple of times you're like, I don't really know if you would do that. And that's kind of out of character, but not too many, and not so far out of character where you're like, what the crap, where did this go? This is just totally out of left field. No, that's not how it is. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about John Cena, and he kind of grew on me. At the beginning, I wasn't too impressed. And he was just kind of there. And he doesn't have a major role in the part. I mean, to the plot, he kind of does, but he's not the central character. And so his interaction is okay. Some of it's good, some of it's just kind of throwaway. Now, if I've got some nitpicks in the film, there are a few, because it's not a perfect film by any means. Some of it is, there's a storyline that happens with some of the kids from school that pick on Charlie, Hailee Steinfeld's character, and they're just mean. And so it's really reminiscent of Mean Girls, where they're just, they're just terrible people. You have a couple of scenes of them interacting, and really I get the sense for it all leads up so that they can do one pretty funny scene. And really though, the whole thing is throwaway. So you don't need the funny scene because the movie's already funny enough. You don't need to, there's no real point to it. So if you got rid of that whole chunk of it, the film becomes a little shorter, which it doesn't need to be, but it's just a side story that doesn't really add anything to anything. Something else that it bothered me, and if you really like the Transformers, and especially the Transformers with Bumblebee and then the movie series, they don't totally stick with the canon completely. I mean, they break it a little bit in some of the timeline, especially towards the end of the film. So that may tweak you out a little bit. I mean, for me, it was like, oh gosh, I don't know. I mean, I guess if you're going to totally reboot it, fine. That's great. If you're going to just say, you know what, the Transformer movies that have come previous to Bumblebee, while taking inspiration and building on that in Bumblebee, we're not going to pay attention to those, and we're going to keep going from Bumblebee on and create new films. If that's what happens, then I'm totally good with it and them changing the canon a little bit there. Otherwise, it doesn't totally fit. Another nitpicky thing that I have is that there are two Decepticons that come to Earth. It's Dropkick and Shatter, and they're played by Justin Theroux and Angela Bassett. Now, it's not them, and it's not the voice acting or anything like that. It's the fact that there is two scenes where they transform from robots into a car, into their flying selves. And why didn't they just jump from robot to flying in a way? And then when they land at one point, it literally comes flying thing, they fly in, then they transform into a car, and then a second later, they're back up to robots. And so it just, I don't know, is it to show that, hey, look, we can show Transformers and they're transforming because we haven't had a lot of Transformers on screen, and so maybe that's it? I don't know. It just, again, nitpicky, but it seemed kind of unnecessary to me and a little weird. There's a dramatic or sad moment that happens in the story, and because it's kind of a prequel and you know what's going to happen later on, it really takes away from some of the sadness and the tension and even the, oh, what's going to happen? No, we kind of know. And that's the danger, I think, when you do a prequel where the character shows up later in the series, is you can't do too many things overly dramatic with them where it's a cliffhanger because, well, we know the outcome, right? Now, I think Bumblebee is a great addition to the Transformer series, especially because the Transformer series, it gets worse each movie that happens. I mean, the last several of them you can just throw away completely and let's not even talk about them. And I've heard it said that Bumblebee is the best of the series. I think I can agree with that. And now, the original Transformers with Shia LaBeouf, that's a close second for me. I really liked that one. And maybe that's a nostalgia thing also, because we get to see Optimus Prime and I hear him again, just how I had heard him on the cartoons. But Bumblebee is a really solid story, and it was a lot of fun. And I truly think I can agree with that it is the best of the series. There's no sex or nudity. There is some profanity and a fair amount of violence. I'll definitely be buying Bumblebee when it comes out. I give it 4.5 out of 5 couches. Who is your favorite Transformer? I'd love to know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.